everybody. This is Dr. Doug, and I'm here to give you part 2 of the previous conversation, which is what is family systems and how do we understand a major pioneer in family systems, Murray Bowen, multi-generational transmission, and what he means by differentiation. That was for the students, but it's also for anybody else who wants to listen, anybody in therapy and anybody wanting to do therapy or do some of their own self-study. Most of it was idea-oriented. Most of it was conceptual. Now I'd like to go for all of you a little bit into maybe doing a little work together. Okay, so if you're ready, you don't have to. Take out your phones or take out your notebook or whatever you might want to write on, because we're going to do a little work together. Here we go. My first question to you, and you can also ask me, is what is your level of differentiation? Be really honest. 0 means no one's 0. It means you're completely psychotic and you just say whatever comes to mind. So let's not do 0. 25 is I mostly just say whatever the F I want. I don't care how anybody feels about it. If they don't like it, they could go away. I'm honest. I say how I feel. That's kind of like not really differentiation. That is also not feeling. Feeling is really more a process of digestion. What people often confuse authenticity with feeling. They're not the same thing. I want to remind everybody, feeling is more processed. It's more rational. Just blurting stuff out may sound authentic, and it may be really good if your partner is able to be a little bit of a therapist and not take it all literally, but often it is not necessarily the best use of feeling. So we're at 25. 50, probably most of us are around 50, which is we know when we're really, really, really upset, we probably don't want to talk at that moment, but we may say things that could be construed as passive aggressive. Why don't you call me? Or you don't love me? Or it's okay, honey, I'll just sit here in the closet by myself. Or, well, you did what? You came home when? You know, that you're angry, but you're not saying you're angry. 75 is definitely you've done some therapy. You know that it's possible for you to have your feeling right here, and you don't have to share all of it. You just transmit it. You can even just vibe with somebody. Or you can say, you know, honey, or whatever you want to call the person you're really close with. You don't have to call them honey. Whatever it is, Barry. I have something I want to talk to you about. I don't know if now's the right time. I know driving in the car is not the right time. Let's find a time. And that's more like 75 and 100. Well, none of us is 100. It's like, you know, Buddha. So just think to yourself, knowing how you are, where are you? Are you 0? Are you 25? Are you 50? Are you 75? Are you more like 90? And don't tell me you're 100, because you're not telling the truth, okay? We're all just basically humans at this point. So think about that. Maybe another cool thing to think about is, can you tell me a story recently of when you felt a certain way with your mother, with your father, with your sister, with your girlfriend, with your husband, wherever it is, with your dog? And how did you handle that? How differentiated were you? Were you able to separate your feeling from your thought? So do a little work. Write me a little story about how that happened, and let's talk about it at some point. This is what I want you to do. I want you to just write a little bit about where you're at on the scale, differentiation scale, and also tell me a little story about how you handled it last time. And then feel free to just write it in the comments here, okay? In class we can talk about it, but you can just write me here. I will be more than happy to respond. What a great conversation we could have. Honest, where are you on the scale of differentiation? Once you've done that, I have another little question for you. How are you with dealing with hurt and anger? How do you handle that yourself? Do you just, get high and watch TV and make it go away the next day? Or do you try to process it a little bit with yourself? Very simple technique is called journaling. So if you're feeling a certain type of way and you're really, really, really so upset and you know you don't want to hit the send button on that text, because you can't take that text away. But we want to be more in the brain waves, neurology of repair, 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 and less rupture, rupture, rupture. The main way to do that, I'm going to invite all of you out there to think about it. How do you deal with those really difficult feelings of hurt, anger, and shame? Do you label them? It might be actually really cool to label them as kids. I got my hurt kid. He looks like that, or she looks like that. I got my angry kid. She looks like that. And I got my shame kid, and his head is really in his chest, and he's just so sad and hope somebody can come pick him up. It might be good to actually give them kid names. And that way the feeling is not so much mixed up with your adult self. It's personified. So tell me a little story, or tell yourself a little story. How do you handle, self-soothe, label, and ground? I'm going to say it again. Label the feeling. Ground the feeling. Put your feet on the floor, your hands on the table, breathe and go, wow, I'm really hurt right now. And then do a little journaling. It's so simple, but believe it or not, if you practice those 3 steps, labeling, grounding, let me add breathing, and then journaling. If you do those 4 steps, it may not work at first, but you're going to gain an enormous fluency over your own emotional life that will just be an investment, in your psychological future. So do a little writing right now, and if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to bring it up in class next week or write it in the comments. How do you normally handle hurt, rage, and shame? Another important question I want you to consider right now is, tell me a little story about how you notice triangles in your own life. And I'm sure they're there. You might have just had a phone conversation with your mother yesterday where she was talking smack about your brother because he's this, that, and the other, but she wasn't talking to him. So how do you handle that? I want to hear a little story. Write it down. Do you basically take the phone when she's doing that and go like this so you're not listening and she's going on and on? That's one way. Do you text other people while she's talking and basically hear only a fraction of what she's saying? That's another way. Do you get into it with her about how he is a loser and a POS and she's absolutely right, which is the wrong thing to do, because we don't want to create triangles with our parents about our siblings if possible. It's not healthy, and it makes us be more of a parent than a sibling. We want to keep the siblings, keep the parents. It's another theory. It's called structural theory. I'm not going to talk about that right now. Talk about that next time. But how are you dealing with the triangle? Are you ignoring it? Are you just wasting time until it's over? Or are you actually increasing it? Be really honest. It's okay. We're not supposed to be perfect. But just write it down and see if you can let me know how that's going. To be really, really curious. The next one I'm really curious about, tell me a story about emotional fusion. How are you dealing with that? How are you dealing with that kind of fusion? Are you usually so interested in your partner that mostly you're really engaged and you're talking and you're keeping things spontaneous and alive and the sex is great? That's not fusion. That's usually intimacy. Intimacy and fusion are not the same thing. Intimacy takes hard work. Fusion takes no work. So you can also see if the sex has died, if you don't talk to each other, if you just go home and eat your TV dinner in front of the TV, that's fusion. So do me a little work here. Write down in your journal what kind of condition your major relationship is in. Is it fusion or is it moving towards greater differentiation, which is another way to say intimacy? One other thing I want you to think about is, how are you doing with your reading? Bowen calls that bibliotherapy. Now, I know you therapists out there, I know you're doing a lot of reading. If you're in my class, you're doing a lot of reading. I try to help you out and only break it up into groups a little bit, week at a time. But everyone else, reading really helps the mind wake up. It really helps you think and meditate. So there's a couple of books I want you to think about for bibliotherapy. One is The Family Crucible, written by Gus Napier. It's written like a novel. It teaches you everything you need to know about family therapy. The only problem was written in the 80s. The hairdos suck, and all the people are white and cisgendered. I do apologize. There's no book written like that for people of color. We need that. Help us write that book for people of color and queer people, okay? But it's still very good. Family Crucible by Napier and Whitaker. I'd also recommend that you read Alice Miller's The Drama of the Gifted Child. Must read. I really highly recommend it. Another important book by Robert Johnson, Owning Your Own Shadow. There's a lot more books I would recommend, but start with those. And feel free to let me know how it's going, either in class or in the comments page on this YouTube. That's the homework for this week. I hope it's helping you live your life to the fullest. Don't forget to ask me any questions here or elsewhere. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next time.